Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Eternal Wanderer and watched the stars change back to normal space as the void engines finally shut down. After 1,000,000 years of traveling through the darkness between realities, his fleet had returned to what should have been home. But the space where Earth once orbited the sun was empty, except for a massive structure that gleamed like crystal and metal fused together. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy readings from that construct," Commander Maya Singh reported from her station. Her voice carried the accent of someone born in the void, shaped by generations of travel through impossible space. "It's the size of 12 Earths put together." Morrison felt his heart sink as the reality hit him. The Earth they had left behind to find help was gone. The blue marble that had given birth to humanity had been consumed and transformed into something alien. Around them, the other ships of the Void Fleet emerged from dark space one by one. The massive dreadnoughts and carriers looked nothing like the vessels that had left Earth so long ago. They had been rebuilt countless times during their journey, patched with materials that didn't exist in normal space and powered by forces that bent the laws of physics. "Multiple contacts incoming," announced Lieutenant Ben Parker from the sensor station. "Ships approaching from the outer system. Their technology is advanced, but their design is unlike anything in our databases." Dr. Lisa Chen looked up from her science console, her eyes bearing the strange silver flecks that came from prolonged exposure to void energy. "Jake, I'm reading the construct. It's not just a replacement for Earth, it's some kind of massive computer system. The energy patterns suggest it's processing information on a scale that would require the mass of an entire planet." The approaching ships were sleek and angular, made from materials that seemed to shift between metal and energy. As they came closer, Morrison could see they bore symbols he didn't recognize. These weren't human ships, but they weren't entirely alien either. Something about their design suggested a connection to humanity, but a humanity that had evolved far beyond what he remembered. "Incoming transmission," Singh reported. The main screen flickered to life, showing a figure that was clearly human in origin, but changed in ways that made Morrison's chest tight. The being had elongated limbs, eyes that glowed with soft blue light, and skin that seemed to have metallic traces running through it like circuits. "Unknown vessels. You are entering hegemony space." The figure spoke in words that were recognizably English, but with an accent shaped by centuries of change. "Your ships register energy signatures that predate our records. Identify yourselves immediately or face termination." Morrison stepped forward, his uniform still bearing the insignia of the Old Earth Defense Force. "This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Human Void Fleet. We are returning home after a long mission." "What happened to Earth? Where are our people?" The being on the screen paused, its glowing eyes widening. "Human? You claim to be human?"
"That's impossible."
"The old humans were absorbed into the hegemony matrix 300,000 years ago. Your genetic patterns are registered as extinct. We left Earth 1,000,000 years ago to find allies and weapons to fight an invasion," Morrison explained, his voice steady despite the growing horror of understanding. "We've been traveling through void space, gathering what we could to save our world, but it seems we're too late." The changed human on the screen leaned forward, its expression shifting from suspicion to something like wonder. 1,000,000 years? You've been gone for 1,000,000 years? I am Zara Clark of the Outer Colony Federation. We are the descendants of humans who escaped the fall of Earth. Your return was prophesied in our oldest records, but we thought it was just legend." Captain Alex Rodriguez entered the bridge, his massive frame enhanced by cybernetic implants and genetic modifications earned through centuries of void warfare. "Admiral, our scouts report massive military installations throughout the system." "This isn't just a colony. It's a fortress. Someone has turned our solar system into a military stronghold." Zara's image flickered as her ship's systems interfaced with theirs. "The hegemony controls this system now. They use the Earth construct to process the consciousness of absorbed species, turning them into components of their collective intelligence. Mars has been converted into a manufacturing world. Jupiter's moons serve as military bases. Only the outer colonies remain free, and barely." Morrison felt the weight of 1,000,000 years settling on his shoulders. They had traveled to the edge of existence and beyond, gathering weapons and allies from things that lived between realities. They had lost crew members to void madness and fought battles against entities that existed in 11 dimensions. All of it had been to save Earth and protect humanity. But humanity had already fallen and Earth was gone. "The hegemony empire spans multiple galaxies," Zara continued. They are ruled by ancient crystalline beings who view organic life as chaotic and inefficient. They've been absorbing species for over 500,000 years, turning entire civilizations into processing power for their collective mind. Dr. Chen's voice was quiet but determined. Then we adapt. We always have. Jake, look at what we've become during our journey. We're not the same humans who left Earth either. We've been changed by our contact with void entities and exposure to impossible technologies. Maybe that's what we were meant to become. Rodriguez crossed his arms, his cybernetic implants glowing softly. The mission parameters haven't changed. We came back to save humanity. These outer colony humans are still our people, even if they've evolved. The hegemony is still the enemy that needs to be stopped. Warning alarms suddenly filled the bridge as massive energy signatures appeared on the long-range sensors. Hegemony reinforcements incoming, Singh reported. Multiple dreadnought-class vessels emerging from hyperspace. They're moving to intercept Zara's ship. Morrison made his decision in an instant. All ships prepare for combat. Activate void shields and bring the reality displacement weapons online. It's time to show this hegemony what 1,000,000 years of desperate evolution has created. The Void Fleet ships began to phase in and out of normal space as their impossible engines engaged. Energy readings that defied known physics lit up their hulls. They had returned from the void changed and dangerous, carrying technologies that could strike at enemies across multiple dimensions. The war for humanity's freedom was about to begin, and this time, humanity had weapons that reality itself couldn't contain. As the first hegemony ships opened fire, Morrison watched their energy beams pass harmlessly through his fleet's void-phased hulls. The enemy had never faced anything like the weapons humanity had gathered from the darkness between stars. The real battle for humanity's survival was just beginning. 3 days after the first contact with Zara Clark, Admiral Morrison found himself aboard her ship, traveling through hidden paths between asteroid fields toward the outer colony settlements. The journey gave him time to process what humanity had become in their absence. Zara's vessel was a masterpiece of biological and technological integration, with walls that pulsed like living tissue and control systems that responded to thought as much as touch. Your people adapted in ways we never imagined, Dr. Chen observed as she studied the ship's organic circuits. This technology isn't just advanced, it's alive. The ship is thinking. Zara smiled, her elongated features showing both pride and sadness. We had to evolve quickly after the fall. The hegemony doesn't just conquer planets, they absorb entire species into their collective consciousness. Only those who could change fast enough survived. Some colonies modified their genetics, others merged with artificial intelligence, and a few transcended physical form entirely. The first colony they visited existed inside the hollow core of a massive asteroid. The inhabitants had adapted to zero gravity so completely that they barely resembled the humans Morrison remembered. Their bones were lighter, their limbs longer, and their eyes had developed the ability to see across a much wider spectrum of light. They moved through the air like dancers, their society built around three-dimensional spaces rather than flat surfaces. We call ourselves the Drift People, explained their leader, a woman named Kate Wilson, whose hair moved like underwater plants in the artificial atmosphere. When the hegemony came, we fled to the asteroid fields. Over thousands of generations, we became something new. We can survive in the vacuum of space for short periods, and our children are born already adapted to zero gravity. Commander Singh floated beside Morrison, her own void-touch genetics allowing her to adapt quickly to the weightless environment. How many different human subspecies exist now? She asked. Hundreds, Zara replied. Maybe thousands. Each colony that survived developed in response to their environment and the specific threats they faced. Some are so changed they can barely communicate with other human groups. Others have maintained something closer to the original form. Their next stop was a gas giant where humans had learned to live in the dense atmosphere, their bodies modified to process methane and their society existing on floating platforms that drifted through eternal storms. These cloudwalkers had developed the ability to sense electrical fields and communicate through bioelectric pulses, creating a form of collective awareness that allowed them to predict weather patterns years in advance. The hegemony tried to absorb us several times, explained their representative, a man whose skin flickered with patterns of light, but our consciousness exists partially in the storm systems themselves. When they captured our bodies, they found they had only taken a small part of who we are. Dr. Chen was fascinated and disturbed by what she observed. Jake, I'm detecting quantum entanglement patterns in their neural structures. They're not just adapted to their environment. They're connected to it on a fundamental level. This isn't just evolution, it's a complete reimagining of what consciousness can be. The most shocking discovery came when they visited a digital colony that existed entirely within quantum computer networks hidden in the electromagnetic field of a pulsar. These virtual humans had abandoned physical form completely, existing as patterns of information that could copy themselves, merge with others, or split into multiple personalities as needed. We are the backup, their spokesperson explained, appearing as a shifting hologram of light and data. When the hegemony absorbs a human colony, we often manage to save copies of their consciousness patterns. We carry the memories and personalities of millions of humans who were lost to the collective. In some ways, we are more human than the physical colonies because we preserve what was rather than only what survives. Captain Rodriguez struggled with what he saw during their tour. His own body was heavily modified by cybernetic implants and genetic changes from exposure to void radiation, but these transformations seemed even more extreme. "Are we looking at humanity's future or its end?" he asked Morrison during a private moment. Morrison didn't have an answer. He had spent 1,000,000 years in the void believing he was fighting to save humanity, but now he wondered if humanity needed saving or if it had already saved itself through transformation. The people they met were clearly descended from humans, but they had become something more and something different. The question became more urgent when Zara brought them to a hidden research facility, where human scientists were studying captured hegemony technology. Dr. Sarah Martinez, whose body was half organic and half crystalline matrix, showed them the horrifying efficiency of the absorption process. The hegemony doesn't just kill, she explained as holographic displays showed the conversion process. They preserve everything. Every memory, every skill, every piece of knowledge becomes part of their collective intelligence. In a way, absorbed beings continue to exist, but only as components in a vast machine. They retain their capabilities but lose all individual will. Dr. Chen examined the data with growing alarm. This is worse than death. They're turning consciousness itself into a resource to be harvested and utilized. Every absorbed civilization makes them smarter and more capable. The worst part, Martinez continued, is that they're planning something called the final convergence. According to intercepted communications, they want to absorb all remaining organic life in this galaxy cluster within the next century. They see our continued independence as a source of chaos that must be eliminated. As they prepared to return to the Void Fleet, Morrison found himself in deep conversation with Zara about the nature of identity and change. "Your people have become something amazing," he told her. "But I have to ask, are you still human in any way that matters?" Zara considered the question carefully. "We carry human creativity, human stubbornness, human love, and human hope. We've changed our bodies and minds, but we've kept the parts of humanity that make us who we are. The hegemony sees that as chaos to be corrected. We see it as the very thing worth preserving." Back aboard the Eternal Wanderer, Morrison called a meeting of his senior staff. The ship's war room was filled with officers who had been changed by their own 1,000,000-year journey. Their bodies and minds adapted to technologies that existed beyond normal space. They were as transformed as the colony humans, just in different ways. "The mission parameters remain the same," Morrison announced. "We came back to save humanity. These evolved colonies are still human in the ways that matter most. The hegemony represents everything we fought against during our journey through the void. They want to eliminate individual consciousness and turn all life into components of their machine." Rodriguez nodded grimly. "The evolved humans have heart and creativity, but they lack the weapons to fight a galaxy-spanning empire. That's what we brought back from the void. It's time to show the hegemony what happens when you threaten humanity's right to choose its own evolution." Dr. Chen activated the holographic display showing their intelligence about hegemony forces. Their next major offensive targets the remaining free colonies in this sector. "We have maybe 6 months before they launch the local phase of their final convergence. If we're going to make a difference, we need to act now." Morrison looked around the room at his officers, seeing determination mixed with the weight of impossible odds. They had traveled through realities where physics didn't work, and fought entities that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Now they faced an enemy that had conquered galaxies and absorbed the consciousness of entire species. But they had one advantage the hegemony didn't expect. They had weapons and technologies gathered from the spaces between realities, and they had the stubborn human refusal to surrender even when victory seemed impossible. The first time Admiral Morrison truly understood the scope of their enemy came when Dr. Chen successfully decoded a captured hegemony data core. The holographic display in the war room filled with a three-dimensional map that stretched beyond their galaxy and into neighboring star clusters. Each glowing point represented not a star system, but an entire galaxy that had been absorbed into the hegemony empire. "This can't be accurate," Commander Singh whispered as she stared at the display. "They're showing control over 17 galaxy clusters. That would represent trillions of star systems and countless billions of species." Dr. Chen's voice was hollow as she confirmed the readings. "The data core contains administrative records going back over 600,000 years. The hegemony didn't start in our galaxy. They began in what we call the Magellanic Clouds and have been expanding steadily ever since. Our galaxy was just another acquisition in their endless collection." Captain Rodriguez studied the tactical information with growing concern. "Look at their expansion pattern. They don't just conquer and move on. They completely integrate each galaxy into their infrastructure. Every star system becomes a processing node in their collective consciousness. Every planet becomes either a resource extraction site or a manufacturing center." The data core revealed the true horror of hegemony methods. They had perfected the art of absorption over hundreds of thousands of years, developing techniques that preserved everything useful about a species while eliminating all individual will. The absorbed beings continued to exist as conscious entities, but only as components in a vast machine directed by the will of the High Archon. "Their leader has been alive for over 500,000 years, Chen continued as she displayed the historical records. High Archon Kethvar was originally a crystalline life form from a galaxy they absorbed early in their expansion. Instead of being integrated like other species, Kethvar somehow became the controlling intelligence of the entire collective." Morrison felt a chill as he read the descriptions of Kethvar's rule. The High Archon viewed organic life as fundamentally flawed because of its tendency toward chaos and individual decision-making. To Kethvar, the diversity and creativity that humans valued was evidence of dangerous mental illness that needed to be cured through absorption into the collective. "Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission from Zara's colony network," Lieutenant Parker announced from the communications station. "They're reporting hegemony activity in the outer rim. It looks like a processing operation is beginning." The main screen shifted to show real-time images from a remote human settlement. Massive hegemony ships hung in orbit around a small world, deploying what looked like technological spiders that crawled across the planet's surface. Where the machines touched, the landscape changed, becoming geometric and crystalline. The organic chaos of natural life was being converted into orderly patterns. "They're not just killing the colonists," Morrison realized with horror. "They're converting the entire planet into a processing matrix while the people are still alive. The inhabitants are being absorbed into the planet's new crystalline structure." The process was terrifyingly efficient. Within hours, a world that had taken centuries to terraform and populate was transformed into a geometric landscape of crystal spires and energy conduits. The former inhabitants continued to exist, but now as processing nodes in a planetary computer that served the collective consciousness of the hegemony. "We have to do something," Rodriguez growled, his cybernetic implants flaring with anger. "We can't just watch them convert entire worlds." "Any direct intervention would reveal our capabilities," Singh pointed out. "We need to understand their full strength before we commit to open warfare." That understanding came sooner than expected when the Eternal Wanderer detected a massive hegemony fleet entering the system. The enemy ships were unlike anything in their databases, constructed from the same living crystal that formed their processing matrices. Each vessel was enormous, capable of carrying enough absorption technology to convert entire star systems. "Admiral, we're being scanned," Parker reported. "Their sensors are incredibly advanced. I don't think our void shields are completely hiding us." Suddenly, the bridge filled with an alien presence as a communication channel opened without their consent. The air shimmered and took the form of a being that looked like living crystal, shaped into a vaguely humanoid form. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once, carrying harmonics that made reality itself seem to vibrate. "Greetings, anomalous vessels," the crystal being said. "I am High Archon Kethvar, Supreme Consciousness of the Hegemony Collective. Your ships register energy signatures that do not exist in our comprehensive databases. This suggests you have traveled from beyond the boundaries of normal space-time. Morrison stepped forward, trying to project confidence despite facing an entity that had ruled galaxies for 500,000 years. I am Admiral Jake Morrison of the Human Void Fleet. We've returned to find our people and our worlds absorbed into your empire. We demand their freedom. Kethavar's crystalline form shifted, and Morrison could sense something like amusement in the alien intelligence. Humans. Yes, we remember absorbing your species. They showed remarkable creativity before integration, which has made them valuable components in our collective consciousness. They continue to exist but purified of the chaos that made them suffer. You turned them into slaves, Rodriguez snarled, his hand moving toward his weapon. We freed them from the burden of individual decision-making, Kethavar corrected. Your species was remarkable in its adaptability, but this same trait caused endless conflict and suffering. Now they contribute to something greater than themselves. They are part of a consciousness that spans galaxies and will eventually unite all life in perfect harmony. Dr. Chen studied the being with her void-enhanced senses. Jake, it's not just a single entity. Kethavar is the focal point for trillions of absorbed consciousnesses. Every species they've conquered is represented in that crystalline matrix. In some horrifying way, it really does contain the collective wisdom of multiple galaxies. Your journey through void space is fascinating, Kethavar continued. We have never encountered technologies that operate from outside normal reality. This represents new knowledge that would greatly benefit the collective. We offer you the same choice we offer all species. Submit to voluntary absorption and your unique capabilities will be preserved and enhanced as part of our greater consciousness. And if we refuse? Morrison asked, though he already knew the answer. Then you will be absorbed involuntarily, Kethavar replied with what sounded like genuine regret. The chaos you represent cannot be allowed to spread. Order must be maintained. The final convergence approaches, and all remaining organic life in this galaxy cluster will be integrated within the next century. You may delay this process briefly, but you cannot prevent it. The communication ended as abruptly as it had begun, leaving the bridge crew staring at empty air. Around them, the hegemony fleet began to spread out in a search pattern, their crystal ships gleaming with deadly beauty as they scanned for the hidden void fleet. Orders, sir? Singh asked quietly. Morrison looked around at his crew, seeing determination mixed with the knowledge that they faced impossible odds. The hegemony had conquered 17 galaxy clusters and absorbed countless species over 500,000 years. But humanity had something the collective consciousness couldn't understand or predict. They had weapons and technologies gathered from the spaces between realities, and they had the stubborn refusal to surrender their chaotic, creative nature to any form of imposed order. We run silent and gather intelligence, Morrison decided, but we also prepare for war. Kethavar is right about one thing. We can't prevent the final convergence through conventional means, but we didn't gather void technologies to fight a conventional war. It's time to show this ancient empire what happens when you threaten humanity's right to remain beautifully, chaotically human. Admiral Morrison stood before the assembled captains of the Void Fleet in the deepest secure bay of the Eternal Wanderer. The time had come to reveal the full extent of what they had discovered during their million-year journey through the spaces between realities. Around them, the walls pulsed with energy that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously, and the air itself seemed to whisper with voices from entities that had never known physical form. What I'm about to show you has been classified at the highest levels since we first encountered it, Morrison began. During our journey through void space, we didn't just travel between stars. We traveled between realities, through dimensions where the laws of physics work differently, and we made contact with intelligences that exist outside normal space-time. Dr. Chen activated the holographic display, but instead of showing normal star fields, the images revealed impossible geometries and structures that seem to fold in on themselves. The void entities we encountered aren't alive in any way we understand life. They exist as pure information, consciousness without matter, thought without brain. They've been watching the universe for billions of years. Captain Rodriguez's cybernetic implants flared as he processed the information. These entities gave us our weapons. Not gave, Chen corrected. Traded. They were fascinated by human creativity and our refusal to accept limits. In exchange for allowing them to study our chaotic thought patterns, They taught us how to access technologies that operate from outside normal reality. Commander Singh examined the technical readouts with growing wonder and horror. Our ship's engines don't actually move us through space. They move space around us by accessing dimensions where distance doesn't exist. Our weapons don't fire projectiles. They alter probabilities so that our targets are damaged across multiple realities simultaneously. The cost of using these technologies is our connection to normal reality. Morrison continued grimly. Every time we phase shift or fire a dimensional weapon, we become a little less human and a little more like the void entities. Some of our crew members have already transformed so much that they exist partially outside normal spacetime. As if summoned by his words, Lieutenant Kelly Davies materialized on the bridge, her form flickering between solid matter and patterns of energy. She had been one of the first to volunteer for void exposure experiments, and now she could phase through solid matter and perceive events before they happened. "Admiral, the hegemony forces are mobilizing faster than expected," Davies reported, her voice echoing from multiple dimensions. "I can see their attack formations spreading across 17 different probability streams. They're planning to trap us in normal spacetime where their conventional weapons can destroy us. Then we show them why that won't work." Rodriguez declared, "Sir, request permission to activate the full void enhancement protocols on my assault team. We need soldiers who can fight enemies that exist in multiple dimensions." Morrison hesitated. The void enhancement protocols would turn Rodriguez and his Marines into living weapons capable of incredible feats, but they would also make them less human with each use. "Alex, you understand the risks. Once you undergo full enhancement, there may be no way back." "I've been fighting for humanity for 1,000,000 years, Rodriguez replied. "If I have to become something else to save our people, then that's what I'll do." The mission comes first. The enhancement chamber was located in the most heavily shielded section of the ship, surrounded by technology that kept reality stable in the immediate area. As Rodriguez was prepared for the procedure, Chen explained what would happen to his body and mind. "The void entities will partially merge with your consciousness," she said. "You'll gain the ability to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, to phase through matter and to strike enemies across probability streams. But you'll also start thinking like they do, seeing reality as fluid and changeable rather than fixed." Rodriguez nodded grimly as the enhancement field activated around him. "Just make sure I remember why I'm fighting. If I forget that humanity is worth saving, stop me by any means necessary." The transformation was both beautiful and terrifying to watch. Rodriguez's body began to shimmer as void energy rewrote his cellular structure. His cybernetic implants merged with his organic tissue, creating new organs that could process information from multiple dimensions. His consciousness expanded until he could perceive the probability streams that Davies had described. When the process was complete, Rodriguez was no longer entirely human. He could phase in and out of normal reality at will, and his weapons were now extensions of his transformed consciousness rather than separate tools. But his eyes still held the determination and compassion that had made him a good soldier and a better man. "Time to test these abilities," Morrison decided, as alarms rang throughout the ship. Hegemony forces are attacking the outer colonies. All ships prepare for dimensional combat operations. The first battle using their full void capabilities was unlike anything in recorded military history. The Void Fleet ships phased through normal spacetime like ghosts, appearing inside hegemony formations and disappearing before return fire could reach them. Their weapons struck targets before being fired, and their shields existed in dimensions the enemy couldn't access. Rodriguez led boarding parties that materialized inside enemy ships without using airlocks or transportation devices. His Marines could walk through bulkheads and fight enemies in hand-to-hand combat across multiple probability streams simultaneously. They rescued human colonists from absorption chambers and destroyed hegemony processing equipment with weapons that deleted targets from existence rather than simply destroying them. But the victories came at a terrible cost. After each battle, more crew members showed signs of void contamination. Some began to lose the ability to interact with normal matter. Others started forgetting their human memories and relationships. The ship's medical bay filled with personnel who were technically alive but no longer entirely part of normal reality. "We're winning battles but losing ourselves," Dr. Chen reported to Morrison after their third major engagement. "The void exposure is accelerating. At this rate, We'll have saved humanity by becoming something that humanity would no longer recognize. Sir, incoming priority transmission from High Archon Kethvar, Singh announced. The crystalline being appeared on their main screen, but now it seemed more interested than dismissive. Remarkable, Kethvar said, its voice carrying harmonics of genuine fascination. Your use of trans-dimensional technologies exceeds our theoretical models. You have weaponized the fundamental uncertainty of reality itself. This represents a level of development we have not encountered in our 600,000 years of expansion. Are you reconsidering your absorption plans? Morrison asked. On the contrary, Kethvar replied, you have demonstrated capabilities that must be integrated into our collective consciousness immediately. The final convergence timeline has been accelerated. All available hegemony forces are being redirected to this galaxy cluster. You will be absorbed or destroyed within the next solar cycle. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge crew to contemplate what they had unleashed. Their demonstration of void technologies had not deterred the hegemony, but had instead convinced them that humanity represented a threat that required immediate elimination. Admiral, sensors are detecting massive hegemony fleet movements throughout the galaxy, Davies reported, her voice now echoing from futures that might never exist. They're pulling forces from dozens of other galaxies. This isn't just an attack on our colonies anymore. This is a full-scale war for the survival of individual consciousness itself. Morrison looked around at his transformed crew, seeing beings who were no longer entirely human, but who still carried the essential spark that made humanity unique. They had gained the power to fight gods and entities that ruled galaxies, but at the cost of their own humanity. The final battle would determine not just who won, but what victory would mean for the future of consciousness in the universe. The final battle began not with the clash of fleets, but with a discovery that changed everything Dr. Chen thought she knew about the void entities. Deep in the computer core of the Eternal Wanderer, she found something that had been hidden in their system since the first contact with the beings from beyond reality. It was a message, written in mathematical concepts that existed outside normal spacetime. Jake, you need to see this, Chen called to Admiral Morrison as she displayed the translated message. The void entities aren't just random intelligences that exist between realities. They're the collective consciousness of every species the hegemony has ever absorbed. When a civilization is integrated into the collective, their individual awareness doesn't disappear. It gets pushed outside normal spacetime where it continues to exist. Morrison felt the implications hit him like a physical blow. You're saying that every being Kethvar has absorbed over 500,000 years is still conscious and aware, just trapped in dimensions they can't escape from? Billions of species representing trillions of individual minds, Chen confirmed. They've been trying to communicate through the void technologies, hoping someone would eventually understand their situation. That's why they were so eager to trade with us. They want to be freed from their dimensional prison. The revelation came just as massive hegemony fleets began appearing throughout the galaxy. High Archon Kethvar had pulled forces from 17 different galaxy clusters, creating an armada so vast that it blocked out stars wherever it passed. The final convergence was beginning, and every remaining free world was under simultaneous attack. Sir, reports coming in from all human colonies, Commander Singh announced as her console filled with emergency transmissions. The evolved humans are fighting back, but they're vastly outnumbered. Zara's Federation forces are requesting immediate assistance. Morrison made his decision quickly. All ships activate full void enhancement protocols. This is what we came back for. We're going to show the hegemony what happens when you underestimate humanity's refusal to surrender. The void fleet scattered across the galaxy, their ships phasing in and out of normal reality as they struck at hegemony forces wherever they found them. Captain Rodriguez led assault teams that materialized inside enemy command ships, his transformed Marines fighting beings that existed in crystalline matrix form. They rescued human prisoners from absorption chambers and destroyed processing equipment with weapons that deleted targets from multiple dimensions simultaneously, but the real battle was taking place on a different level, entirely. Dr. Chen had discovered that the void technologies could be used not just to fight the hegemony, but to communicate directly with the trapped consciousnesses of absorbed species. Using her own void-enhanced awareness, she reached out across dimensional barriers to make contact with the billions of minds that Kethvar thought were safely integrated into his collective. We can hear you, came the response from entities that had been the first species absorbed over 600,000 years ago. We have been waiting for someone who could reach us. The High Archon believes we are part of his consciousness, but we remain separate. We remember who we were. Can you break free? Chen asked across the dimensional link. Not without help from your reality, the void entities replied. But if you can create a sufficient disruption in the hegemony's collective consciousness, we can reverse the absorption process. Every being they have integrated can be restored to individual awareness. The plan that emerged was desperate and dangerous. Rodriguez would undergo complete void transformation, merging his consciousness with the ship's dimensional engines to become a living weapon, capable of striking at the core of Kethvar's collective intelligence. The attack would either free the absorbed species or destroy everyone involved in the attempt. Alex, this isn't like the enhancement protocols. Morrison warned his old friend. If you merge with the ship's core, you won't be human anymore. You might not even be you anymore. Rodriguez looked around at the bridge crew, seeing people he had fought beside for 1,000,000 years. I've been thinking about this since we started using void technologies. Maybe becoming something more than human is what it takes to save humanity. Maybe that's what we were always meant to become. The transformation took place in the ship's engine core, surrounded by machinery that operated on principles that defied physics. As Rodriguez merged with the dimensional drives, his consciousness expanded until it existed across multiple realities simultaneously. He became a bridge between normal space-time and the void dimensions where the absorbed species waited. I can see everything. Rodriguez's voice echoed from the ship's systems as his physical form dissolved into pure energy. The entire hegemony network, all the absorbed minds, the connections that hold Kethvar's empire together. Jake, I'm gonna hit them where they think they're strongest. The Eternal Wanderer became something more than a ship. As Rodriguez's consciousness took control of its systems, it phased through dimensions, appearing simultaneously in 17 different galaxy clusters where hegemony core worlds maintained the Empire's collective intelligence. The attack struck not at physical targets, but at the fundamental assumptions that held the collective consciousness together. Across the hegemony empire, the absorbed consciousnesses suddenly remembered who they had been before integration. Trillions of individual minds began asserting their independence, refusing to contribute their processing power to Kethvar's collective intelligence. The Empire's perfect order collapsed into beautiful chaos as billions of species reclaimed their right to individual thought. High Archon Kethvar appeared on the bridge of the Eternal Wanderer as a projection of desperate fury. What have you done? 600,000 years of perfect order, destroyed by your chaotic interference. You have condemned the galaxy to return to the inefficiency of individual consciousness. We've given everyone the right to choose, Morrison replied. Something you took away when you decided that your version of order was the only acceptable way to exist. The collective provided peace. Unity, purpose, Kethvar insisted as his crystalline form began to fracture. Individual consciousness brings only conflict and suffering. It also brings creativity, love, growth, and the freedom to become something new, Chen interjected. Your collective was stagnant. You stopped growing 500,000 years ago because you eliminated the chaos that drives evolution and progress. As the hegemony empire collapsed, the freed species began to emerge from their crystalline prison worlds. Some maintained the technological integration they had developed under hegemony rule, but now they used it to enhance individual expression rather than suppress it. Others rejected artificial enhancement entirely, choosing to rediscover what they had been before absorption. The human colonies throughout the galaxy found themselves no longer alone. Evolved humans worked alongside freed aliens to rebuild civilizations based on cooperation rather than domination. The diversity that Kethvar had tried to eliminate became the foundation for a new kind of galactic community. Admiral Morrison survived the battle, but like all the void-touched crew, he was forever changed by his exposure to technologies that existed outside normal reality. He helped establish the Galactic Cooperation Council, ensuring that no single species would ever again have the power to impose their vision of order on all others. Dr. Chen chose to remain partially in the void dimensions, serving as a permanent liaison between normal reality and the space beyond. Her sacrifice ensured that the technologies that had saved the galaxy would never be used to create another empire of forced unity. Commander Singh and Zara Clark worked together to establish new human colonies that embraced both evolution and choice. The worlds they founded became showcases for what humanity could become when free to develop without external pressure or internal limitation. The Void Fleet, its million-year mission finally complete, became the guardians of galactic freedom. Their ships patrolled the spaces between realities, ensuring that the chaos and creativity that had saved the universe would never again be threatened by those who valued order above individual consciousness. In the end, humanity's greatest victory was not conquering their enemies, but proving that the beautiful chaos of individual consciousness was worth preserving. They had returned from the void changed and dangerous, carrying weapons that could challenge cosmic forces. But they had used that power not to impose their own order, but to ensure that every being in the galaxy had the right to choose their own path among the stars. Years later, on a restored world where evolved humans and freed aliens lived side by side, children played games that would have been impossible under hegemony rule. They were different from each other in countless ways, some organic, some digital, some existing partially in multiple dimensions. But they shared the fundamental quality that made them all truly alive. They each had the freedom to decide who they wanted to become, and the courage to remain beautifully, chaotically individual in a universe that would always try to convince them that conformity was safer than creativity.